Today on the Nourishing You podcast.
I always have patients think of the skin in the middle of their back where you can't reach, where it has the least personal care products that you've probably ever put on your body. That's some of the healthiest skin. And it's because we're not monkeying with it, So sometimes less is more.
What do you like? Tell me what you like.
There's value in that because it almost gives the brain like a vacation, right?
Holistic health is completely underappreciated, but so critical.
Eating whole foods, and
the key is just to find something that you really enjoy.
Welcome to the NAMP Nourishing You podcast. I'm Kristen Burkett.
And I'm Diana Wally. We're your hosts for NAMP's podcast dedicated to connecting holistic health enthusiasts with each other to share practical information from the holistic wellness space for enhanced vitality.
Diana and I are master nutrition therapists, board certified in holistic nutrition with private practices and an online joint venture that supports clients and practitioners as they strive to reach their full potential. We're honored to be hosting this podcast for NAMP and connecting our listeners with the latest in holistic wellness.
If you enjoyed today's show, help us out by commenting below, liking this video, and subscribing to the channel to help us spread the word.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Nourishing You podcast. We're pleased today to have Dr. Julie Greenberg talk with us about diet, among other things, and how those things affect our skin. Dr. Julie Greenberg is a licensed naturopathic doctor and registered herbalist who specializes in integrative dermatology. She is the founder of the Center for Integrative Dermatology, a holistic clinic that approaches skin and hair problems by finding and treating the root cause. Dr. Greenberg holds a BA from Northwestern University, an MBA from Stanford University, and an MD from Bastyr University. While at Naturopathic Medical School, Dr. Greenberg received training with leading experts in dermatology at the University of Washington Medical School Dermatology Clinic and Seattle Children's Hospital Pediatric Dermatology Clinic. She lectures at naturopathic medical schools and is sought after to speak at conferences across the U.S. on the topics of hair, skin, and nails. Welcome, Dr. Greenberg. We are delighted to have you with us today on the show.
Thank you so much, Kristen and Diana. I'm so happy to be here.
So, Dr. Greenberg, this is such a hot topic in our space. And I've noticed just working with clients over the years how prevalent dermatological issues are. But when I was doing research for this show, I read that 1 in 4 Americans is impacted by skin disease, which is huge. So this is why we're so grateful to have you on the show to share your wisdom with the audience. But before we dive into skin issues, we'd love to know more about your background, how you became interested in the holistic side of the field, and get your definition of integrative dermatology.
Yeah, so I guess I'll start with the last piece. My definition of integrative dermatology is that that is a practitioner who's bringing together the best of, all worlds of medicine. So I am a naturopathic doctor by training. So of course I practice naturopathic medicine. But it doesn't mean that I won't ever use pharmaceuticals. I do sometimes, and sometimes they're necessary. So an integrative practitioner is willing to pull together different types of medicine, traditional holistic medicine, conventional medicine, and use the best options depending on the case in front of them to get the best results for their patient or client. So that's how I would define integrative dermatology or integrative medicine. That being said, I primarily use herbs and supplements. 95% of the time plus, I'm not using pharmaceuticals, but there is a time and a place, and they can be super helpful and necessary at times.
Excellent. And then how did you get into this space? Tell us about your background.
Yeah, most people expect me to say like, oh, I had a big skin problem and then I became interested in it, but it was a much more naturopathic path to get there. And if people don't know what naturopathic doctors are who are listening to this podcast, I am one. We are kind of the herbalist doctors of the West. So if you think of TCM, traditional Chinese medicine in like China and Asia, those are doctors who are trained in herbal medicine. Then like in India, we have Ayurvedic medicine, doctors trained in herbal medicine from that area of the world. And then naturopathic doctors, our foundations are from Europe and North America. And so the herbs that we use tend to be from Europe and North America. And it's a holistic approach, a whole person approach. And so our basic tenets are find and treat the root cause. And we say to do that by treating the whole person. And what we mean is that whatever the problem is in front of you, that person is one body, one soul, one spirit, and everything is connected. And so when I say I kind of had a naturopathic path to dermatology, it's because it came through my thyroid. So I actually was diagnosed with autoimmune thyroid disease after business school. And it was really my first experience with a real health issue and Western medicine. And when I went to major medical facility here in Los Angeles, endocrinology, they basically were like, well, you have this autoimmune disease, you're attacking your thyroid. We don't know why. We can't really do anything. You're probably going to be, tired and overweight for the rest of your life. And here's some medicine. And I was, in my late 20s, and I walked out pretty shell-shocked thinking like, what just happened? And it sent me on my own healthcare journey of trying to figure out like what could be going on that I would start attacking and killing my own thyroid. And that led me to personal care products and all of the chemicals that are in our personal care products, particularly here in the US. We are basically unregulated, and a lot of the chemicals that are used in our products here are cheap, but they are terribly, they're bad for us and our health, our skin, and our overall health. And they're not allowed to be used in other parts of the world, but they can here. And as I started discovering that, it's like my mind was just blown, that women put over 125 chemicals on their skin a day using all the various personal care products that we do. And a lot of those are things like endocrine disruptors that can affect health. And so I started really doing research and trying to make my own products and trying to get things clean. And that kind of took me down the dermatology road. So it was actually through my thyroid that I came to focus on skin.
Wow, it's such an interesting journey. I mean, we all seem to have a path in with our own reason somewhere, but I love where it's led you. And we're also grateful that you decided to go the integrative path to dermatology and bring this knowledge to all of us and give everyone hope in this field, because skin issues they're debilitating to people. I mean, we think, oh, it's just skin, so it shouldn't be that big a deal. It's not like having a major organ failure, but our skin is it's the first thing that people see, and it reflects who we are, and people take it so personally. So it really is a critical issue for people to be able to get on top of. So we love that. So there's a lot we can unpack related to our skin here. So maybe you could start us off with some basics about the general factors that can influence our skin health, and maybe what conditions we might see if there's an imbalance.
Yeah, so I always tell my patients, skin is a really tough job to do. It's not like, we're not turtles. We don't build a hard shell and then that's it. And, it's over. That shell is impenetrable on a turtle. Nothing gets in, nothing gets out, and you just build that wall and then you're done. Skin is our largest organ, and it has to let certain things pass through. It's why we know we can put things on our skin and absorb it. It has to let certain things out. We need to sweat and let out toxins and other things. But, it needs to also provide a barrier and not let most things through and not let most things out, or, we'd bleed or leak out. So skin has a really tough job, and you look at healthy skin and it's like, wow, it's soft and it's supple, but it's tough and it's doing all this work. And a lot goes into making that skin healthy. So there's a lot of things that can go wrong. There's kind of what's happening on the inside and what's happening on the outside. Now, I think because we can see and feel skin, a lot of people, and even conventional dermatology is like, let's attack it from the outside. Let's just put things on the skin. And while that's true, what's up here is really kind of dead, these top layers of the skin. So from a naturopathic and a holistic perspective, when I think about skin health, I'm thinking about the skin being built healthy from the inside out. And so there's a lot that goes into that. There are genetics, for example. There's something called filaggrin, which is a protein in skin. We call it the master skin regulator, the skin barrier regulator. And so that sounds pretty important for skin, and it is. It helps to make something called natural moisturizing factor. not surprisingly, natural moisturizing factor helps keep healthy, supple, moisturized skin. And what we found is that a lot of people, for example, with eczema or a condition called keratosis pilaris, which we kind of colloquially call chicken skin, it's like little bumps on the back of the arms and sometimes the thighs or the tush. These people have a filaggrin gene mutation. Now, this doesn't mean that they're doomed to have eczema or keratosis pilaris for the rest of their life, but they are more susceptible to it. And we actually definitely see both eczema and keratosis pilaris run in families, and a lot of times those conditions run together. So those are the kind of things we might be looking out for. Now, we can't change genetics, so we're not going to be able to change the genes. But when we look at things that help produce filaggrin and keep this process healthy, we know that there's certain amino acids that are involved, like L-glutamine and L-histidine. So in patients who are having trouble, I can supplement them, or we can eat foods rich in that. Collagen is a big one, right? We know that collagen is a major protein in the body and super important in skin and healthy skin. And there's been a lot of questions about, can we supplement with collagen to improve skin from the inside out? Because the scientific argument was, well, you're taking this big protein, collagen, and you're eating it, so you're going to break it down. And how is that helping then to build your own collagen? But as it turns out, it does. And there was just last year a meta-analysis and systematic review, which is when researchers look at a lot of different studies out there on how collagen impacts skin. So we're not just looking at one study and one set of researchers. We're trying to kind of collate, okay, all these people did tests on their own. What were the results? And the results showed that supplementing with collagen seems to help. It decreases wrinkles and improves skin hydration. So that has been super interesting to see the scientific evidence. I think in the kind of integrative or holistic space, we've been supplementing with collagen and feel like it gets good results, but we actually have some data to back that up now. And then, of course, topically, there's a lot that does go into skin health for sure. It's our largest organ. It's interfacing with what I call outside world all the time, right? The job of our skin is get out there and defend us, be our front line against everything we're going to come into contact with. That's also a complicated job. And one thing I talk a lot to my patients about is the pH of skin and how critically important that is. So pH is a scale from acids to bases. And maybe when you were in junior high, you remember taking these little strips of litmus paper and you dip them in things and watch them turn a color. And then you'd line it up on the scale to see, is it an acid, is it neutral, or is it a base? Well, skin is surprisingly acidic. It actually goes back to that story of filaggrin and natural moisturizing factor that produces a fatty acid mantle on the skin, which we want. And there's a couple good reasons why we want skin to be acidic. In conditions like eczema and psoriasis, even stuff like herpes, warts, all of the conditions where there's pathogens attacking the skin and causing problems, we find that the pH of skin is off. It gets too high, it's too neutral or alkaline, and the skin can't do its job to protect itself. And so we need to lower that pH back down and make it more acidic. The other benefit to having acidic skin will age slower. So you will have fewer wrinkles and fewer dark spots if all you do is keep the skin acidic. And there's a lot of gorgeous botanicals out there, things like aloe vera gel, hydrosols, apple cider vinegar, teas. These are natural, healthy substances that we can use to make the skin acidic, repair skin. They're anti-aging, and they can help fight skin disease. So there's just so much that goes in to skin. And we didn't even talk about diet yet, but we can get into the factors of diet that impact skin health as well.
That's fascinating. When you talk about having the skin pH being at a certain place and being acidic, are there products and ingredients that you think people are using regularly that are working against that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So soap is a chemical reaction between a substance called lye and then fats or oils. And that can be animal fats and oils or plants. Lye is very, very alkaline. So at least on planet Earth, all soap is going to not be acidic. That's just chemistry. Now, soap is good. We like soap. We need soap. It's antibacterial. It stops us from smelling. It keeps us clean. But what I say is that there's a couple things. We want to use gentle, natural soap. So I always tell patients, flip over your personal care products, read the ingredients. Do you understand these ingredients? It's like your food. I think most of us now are pretty conscientious about reading labels on our food if it comes in a package. Of course, the best is, picking produce off the shelf, no packaging. But, if you have to buy a package, at least read the ingredients. Are they multi-syllabic chemical sounding things in your food that you're like, I don't know what that is, but that's not food? The same thing for personal care. You should understand what's in it. It should be items. I mean, the most confusing might be that there's Latin names for botanical products. That's fine. It should say, also what the kind of common name is. But we want to read our personal care products. And so we want to use gentle, natural soaps with just a few ingredients. And then what we want to do is re-acidify the skin and help pull that pH back down again. And some of those products that I mentioned before, like the aloe, the hydrosols, teas, apple cider vinegar, diluted with water, they're all naturally acidic. They're all good for skin. Aloe vera gel, we know, can help increase collagen production in the skin. So we can do things after we cleanse with gentle cleansers to repair the skin. And sometimes people are over soaping. So I say pits and palms are good to do daily. Otherwise, assess if you've been out, gardening or running and you're in the mud or you're very sweaty. But, the pits would be the armpits and the groin, and the palms would be your hands and the soles of your feet. Those can probably stand more frequent washing to make sure you feel clean and are not smelling, because that's important in our society. But you probably don't need to like scrub your arm. I mean, I always have patients think of the skin in the middle of their back where you can't reach, where it has the least personal care products that you've probably ever put on your body. That's some of the healthiest skin. And it's because we're not monkeying with it, So sometimes less is more.
Yeah. So to your point, the global skincare market is a multi-billion-dollar a year industry that appears to be growing at breakneck speed. And there seems to be a common belief that our skin needs to be addressed more from the outside. But what you're saying is it's really an inside job. So you alluded to this earlier, but can we get into some of the details about diet? You mentioned collagen is great for the skin, but what are some specific foods that you love? Maybe foods you don't love? Is there a specific diet that you recommend that people follow? Let's get into the details there.
Yes. And I'll point out, I do think it's a dual pronged approach for skin,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
There's a lot you can do bad and good from the outside in. But yes, the inside out is probably the most important piece, because skin is supposed to function on its own. We shouldn't need to put, oceans of lotions and potions on our skin. That's not the way it was meant to function. So I think you're right that the focus should be on the inside. So let's talk diet and what kind of stuff can help and harm skin. So if we kind of start with the harming first, there's something called AGEs, advanced glycation end products. And it's a little bit scientific and technical, but if anyone is familiar with diabetes, I think we all know diabetes is a condition where there's too much sugar in the blood. And there's a test we can do called the hemoglobin A1C, and that gives us a number. And the higher the number, kind of the worse it is. And what that number means is it's looking at your red blood cell, and it's trying to see how much sugar has attached itself to the red blood cell. So this is an AGE, an advanced glycation end product. And what the AGE is sugar finds proteins, so either DNA or amino acids, and it attaches itself to it. And that's what's happening in diabetes. There's so much sugar in the blood that it starts to attach itself to red blood cells. And that gives us the measure of how somebody's blood sugar control is doing. We want nice low hemoglobin A1Cs, not a lot of sugar attaching itself to the red blood cells. Well, the same thing happens in the body, and those sugars can attach themselves to skin and things like tendons and all of the connective tissue in your body. And unfortunately, when sugar attaches itself to skin or any tissue in the body, it really makes a bad form of that tissue. So for skin, I tell my patients, think of it like making it like crispy, crunchy, crispy skin. That's not what we want. We want nice, soft, supple skin. We don't want hard, crunchy, crispy skin. And sugar literally does that. It ages you with AGEs, advanced glycation end products. So the more sugar you eat, literally, the crunchier and worse your skin is going to look. There's other foods that can produce ages. So foods that are high naturally in these advanced glycation end products, a lot of meats and cheeses, so animal products. Plants are naturally low in ages. And then the cooking method has a big impact on ages. And we know that if people are eating a diet high in ages, they're absorbing a large percentage of that, and it absolutely gets in and attaches to their skin and other connective tissue. So the type of cooking methods that are going to be high in these ages that will age you are things that create that browning response. So crispy, putting something in a fryer, putting something in a toaster. Whenever that food is turning brown and crispy and crunchy, we like the taste of it because it is yummy, but it's actually not good for us. That's creating ages. I think people know now that like putting meat on the grill and charring it, so there's black lines on the meat. We found that that's actually carcinogenic, and that's part of this Maillard reaction. But even just browning and crisping food. So the cooking methods like frying, broiling, toasting, all of those browning reactions, you're creating ages and then you're eating them and they're going to go into your tissues like your skin. Cooking methods that create lower ages are the water-based methods. So steaming, poaching, those kinds of things, like even a sauteing in water. If you're not creating that crisping browning, you won't be creating ages and you won't be aging your skin. High-fat diets also create something called oxidative stress, ages skin. So we know all of the things that I think typically think of as not great for us, right? Fried foods, fatty foods, a heavy diet and animal products. It is literally going to age you, and high sugar, as we talked about. So what foods can we eat that can help us out and make our skin look healthy? I think the hero is always coming back to plants, whole plant foods. So we know that plants actually help create lower ages. They're not high in sugar, and the beautiful colors that come in the plants can actually make us look younger. So there's been studies on carotenoids. Carotenoids are those like orange and yellow type pigments in fruits and vegetables. So if you think of, like a butternut squash or carrots, any of those, yellow, orange kind of stuff. The higher the diet in carotenoids, they did a study in Japan, the lower the level of crow's feet on aging populations. There's things called polyphenols, which are other bright, beautiful colors in our plants and fruits, like, blueberries and blackberries and raspberries. Anything with those brightly colored fruits and vegetables are filled with this antioxidant polyphenols, and each color gives you a different benefit. So I think there's this sense of eating the rainbow now and getting a wide diversity of these polyphenols in the diet. And they all are anti-aging. They will repair skin and make it look healthier and younger. So, the best diet is a whole foods, plant-based diet. For me, I don't have any issue with patients who want to eat meat. I think the issue is the quantity of meat that we're eating and the fact that it's crowding plants out of the diet. So my recommendation to patients, we're always trying to get to 35 grams of fiber a day and at least 30 different plants a week. So we're trying to build in a quantity of fiber, but also a diversity of fiber. And then with meat, we want to do appropriate portion sizes. So I have patients look at their palm. That's about an appropriate serving. It usually works out to be about 3 to 4 ounces of meat per meal. Now, I don't think we need animal products at every meal, but we get a lot of nutrients from animal products that we would have difficulty getting from plants. So I have no problem with people eating, an omnivore diet. Again, as long as it's plant-based, plant-heavy. So I say half the plate when you sit down to eat needs to be vegetables, and then you can fill it up with other things like some grains or some, healthy proteins that were, raised in a healthy way, so that animal can confer health on you. But really, plants are the key towards healthy skin, even. So,
And I'm curious about your take on alcohol.
Yeah, so alcohol is what we call a J curve. And what that means is that people who drink a little bit of alcohol tend to see the overall kind of, it's a correlation, not a causation. But people who have light alcohol consumption tend to correlate with kind of health. People who have zero alcohol consumption ever, for some reason, tend to be just a teeny bit less healthy, not much. But then we start working our way up the J curve as alcohol consumption increases. Alcohol is a toxin. So we never want to consume too much of a toxin. And it does tend to disrupt the gut microbiome. And we haven't really talked about the gut microbiome yet, but there's a very intimate relationship between the microbes living in your gut and how healthy they are and how healthy your skin is. And so the average adult human has about 3 to 5 pounds of microbes living in their gut. And we need to craft and make sure the healthy guys win. And what they're looking for is fiber. The not so healthy guys are looking for things like animal protein and fat and sugar. But we also create something called a mucosal barrier in our entire intestinal tract. And that mucosal barrier provides a function similar to the skin. We talked about how the skin has to let certain things out, put certain things through. The gut has a similarly difficult job. We want to get nutrients from our food from the gut into the bloodstream so that we can send it out to every cell. But we do not want, 3 to 5 pounds of bacteria or fungal things like candida or undigested food getting into the bloodstream. And that mucosal barrier helps basically control that the right things get in, but the wrong things do not get in. And alcohol tends to erode and degrade that barrier. So, no doctor is going to tell you that high alcohol consumption is good. It's not. We know that it's detrimental to health, to skin health, to gut health. It's absolutely going to age you. As far as very light alcohol consumption, I think some people can get away with it. But when I have patients with leaky gut, we try to eliminate all alcohol to begin because it's a toxin and it's going to work on degrading that mucosal barrier and increasing leaky gut. And that's, not something we want. I think we also thought, 1 drink a day, that's maybe the level that works. And at first it was like men and women, or it was like 2 drinks a day. And then we realized women can generally not have as much as men. And now it's like not even a drink a day. So I think, very moderate drinking, if somebody wants to have a glass of wine on the weekend and they're healthy, I don't think there's a problem with that. But alcohol certainly causes widespread, damage in high levels. And it's really something we should think about as something that we should do in very small amounts and not be part of our daily routine for sure. Like coming home from work and opening wine or beer is not a helpful habit for people to have.
So I'm really glad that you mentioned the fact that the amount of alcohol, because I think so many people just want to convince themselves that it's okay. And they'll say, well, there's the polyphenols. Red wine is good for you. And so a drink a day should be fine. And our society's gotten so into it being such a common thing to do that we feel like it's acceptable. But when it comes to our health and skin health and other areas of health, there really is a fine line. And we don't like to have to admit that. But so I'm glad you brought that up. You also mentioned another point that I want to go back on. I want to dig more into the microbiome more with you because that's definitely a topic we wanted to explore. But you mentioned in terms of diet and things that can influence the skin, you talked about a high-fat diet possibly not being as great for the skin. And I know like in our space, there are a lot of people experimenting with ketogenic diets and paleo diets that can be very heavy in the meat consumption, and then high fat as well comes along with that. Can you talk more and kind of tease apart what you mean in terms of high fat? Like, is it the saturated fats versus the monounsaturated fats? Or tell us a little bit more what you mean in terms of how the fat affects the skin.
Yeah. So there's a lot to unpack with, a diet that's high in fat. I'll say so I do gut microbiome testing on all of my patients, and that involves a stool test and a urine test called an organic acid test. I know if my patients have been on a ketogenic or a high-fat paleo diet for a long time, I know what I'm going to see. And sometimes when I see the results, I know that they've been on this diet and they haven't said so maybe in the first visit, but the next visit when I ask them, it's like, oh yeah, well, I have been doing keto. And it is this. There's a section of the stool test that is a marker for the healthy or commensal bacteria in the gut. And those are the good guys. We need them. I mean, we can't survive without our gut, our healthy gut microbiome. And the food that they mostly eat is fiber. So when somebody does a long-term high-fat diet that is going to basically equate to low fiber most of the time, and they're starving out the good microbes. And I think the thing we need to think about is a mind shift. Most people think, well, I'm just eating for me. You know, if I'm not pregnant, I'm just making decisions for me. But you're not. You're making decisions for trillions of microbes in your gut. Who's going to survive and who's going to die? And every time we eat plants, we're making the decision that the good guys are going to survive and thrive. And if we're not giving them fiber, then basically we're killing off those colonies. So everyone who's been on a paleo, high-fat paleo, because there's plant-oriented paleo, but a ketogenic diet for sure, for long periods of time, it's like a desert wasteland in their gut. And for all those commensal good guys, it's like low, 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 low. And some of them are missing. And we have to work on the fiber. So on the one hand, there's this long-term detrimental effect that you're going to kill off the good guys by starving them out. And then you're going to be feeding the more pathogenic ones with, fat and stuff. And there's just no way to keep the good guys alive in a long-term ketogenic diet. Now, intermittent fasting, or if you want to do keto for a couple weeks, I don't have a problem with that. But I've had people who've been on keto for like a year, and they're trying to maybe lose weight. But the problem is also, as soon as they come off that keto diet, they're like, I lost 15 pounds or whatever on keto. But then when I went off it all came back on. Okay, that's not long-term sustainable then. So that's one problem with a high-fat diet and doing something like keto for a long time. But when we actually look at the fats, so there are plant-based fats, and those can be healthier. Animal fats can be healthy too, but I think you need to look at the animal and how it was raised. So if let's say you're going to eat cow, that cow was grass-fed and grass-finished, which means that it spent its entire life in a pasture eating grass, which is the food it's supposed to eat, and it lived a healthy life. Some of that fat is quite healthy for us, and there's not a problem with eating it, again, in appropriate amounts. But we have CAFOs, concentrated animal feedlots, where we shove cows in. It's crowded, it's filthy, they're all pooping, there's disease. They're feeding the cows corn, which incidentally is not a normal food for cow. There's no cow out in nature who could eat corn. They eat grass. So we're feeding them the wrong food, therefore, and they're in crowded, dirty conditions. We have to give them antibiotics. These are not healthy animals, and eating their fat is not going to be healthy for you. And it creates what's called reactive oxidative species or stress. So I think most of us have heard of this concept of antioxidants, and people know that antioxidants are good for them, but most people can't really describe what is an antioxidant and how is it good for me? So if we step off to the side real fast and do a chemistry lesson, we can see what antioxidants are and why they're good. So, and why some of this stuff is bad. So, if you think about a molecule or an atom, electrons like to be paired. So maybe we all remember that from chemistry. A paired electron, so two electrons together, are stable. There are sometimes electrons that are called reactive oxygen species. They're alone and they're looking for somebody, and they're going to steal an electron from anywhere they can get it. So if we have reactive oxygen species in our body that we're either consuming through unhealthy foods or even UV radiation or toxic exposure from toxins, that reactive oxygen species is coming around your body looking to steal an electron, and it will take it from healthy skin. So it will find, or healthy tissue. So even your skin, if it sees, an electron, it's going to steal it from your skin. And then it causes genetic DNA damage to the skin where it stole that electron, because now the skin has an unpaired electron, or that cell does. So what an antioxidant does, and things that are in plants like vitamin C or these polyphenols we were talking about, they step forward and block the reactive oxygen species from attacking your tissue. And they say, take me instead. I will give you an electron. And so plants are good because they're filled with these natural antioxidants. And we're exposed to reactive oxygen species. Part of breathing creates it, right? We breathe oxygen and it gets created. So it's a part of life, but plants naturally give us these antioxidants to defend us. And then you don't even need to take supplements. Of course, it's better in its full form. When we eat high fat and unhealthy fats, I mean, certainly we know trans fats did this like crazy, created these reactive oxygen species and damaged tissues. And now, they're illegal in most foods. We're causing more of this stress, and those don't usually even come packaged with antioxidants. So, it does depend on the fat, and I don't even just, there's good healthy animal fat like salmon, right? Omega-3s. So plant fat is usually going to be pretty good. So things like coconut and avocados, but I think animal fat has gotten a bad rap, and it doesn't need to. We need omega-3 fatty acids from those fatty fish, and even healthy cows or bison or whatever can provide us with healthy fat. But it does depend a lot on the health of the animal and how it was raised as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So if we could go back just quickly to the gut microbiome, because you've mentioned that several times, can we talk about the connection to the skin? And I think I've heard you talk about a skin microbiome. So maybe the skin microbiome versus the gut microbiome, and how someone might know if they have issues around that.
Yeah. So we have microbiomes everywhere. We have a vaginal microbiome, and we have microbiomes that are specific to very small areas like, and the microbiome entails all microbes. So bacteria, fungal, animal. I mean, we have mites that live all over us, and mites that specialize in eyelashes, and mites that specialize in eyebrows. So we do have microbiomes absolutely everywhere. Our belly button, I think, is interesting, is its own like very unique microbiome with like bacteria that don't grow anywhere else.
Ew.
Yeah, it sounds kind of weird, but I guess, the belly button is weird. So I was like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. So for sure, we have skin microbiomes, and the skin microbiome varies from location to location on the body. The gut microbiome varies from location to location on the body. The microbiome, like up in the small intestine, is very different than at the back of the colon. But it is all related, while they are quite different. And I say, we're kind of a tube, right? The outside of the tube is our skin. The inside of the tube is our digestive tract. If you swallowed a little plastic ball, it would just pinball right through you until you poop it out, right? We have a hole in the center of us. And so we are a tube, and it's all epithelial or skin-based cells. So the skin and the gut meet in the mouth and at the anus, and it's all connected. So it's a different microbiome on the skin and in the gut, but they are connected. And for certain diseases like eczema, for example, there's a bacteria called Staph aureus or Staphylococcus aureus. It's a big player in driving eczema. And what we find is that it's kind of all over the place. So there's staph overgrowth on the skin. I usually find, and so does the published research supports this, Staph aureus overgrowth in the gut, and staph colonizes the nose. So we have Staph aureus overgrowth in, the nasal passages. So it is all connected. And even our respiratory microbiome, we think about the fact that things could be colonizing the throat, the tonsils, and even the mouth, the oral microbiome. We swallow 1 liter to 1.5 liters of saliva a day. So whatever your oral microbiome is, you're seeding your GI tract. So it's definitely all connected. There's crosstalk, and we can get things like, so Candida is a yeast. It is normal to find it in the digestive tract. It's normal to find it in the vagina. It lives in us and on us. It's not a big deal. But when it overgrows, it does cause a huge problem. So if any woman has had a vaginal yeast infection, you have experienced a Candida overgrowth in the vaginal microbiome, and it's a nightmare. And you will be calling your gynecologist the first thing you wake up in the morning before you do anything else. The same thing can happen in the gut. The Candida can overgrow. People don't know about it as much unless it's at the back end, and sometimes they can complain about anal itching. That can be Candida very close to the back end. But the connection is things like, once there's Candida overgrowth in the gut, there's a lot of inflammation, a lot that happens because of that. But the immune system becomes ramped up against the Candida yeast, and it says, whoa, we got too much of this stuff. let's put out a most wanted poster on Candida yeast and pass this around the body. So now the immune system is like, okay, got it. Candida attack, bad guy. Well, we have another type of yeast on the skin called Malassezia yeast. And it is a different organism, but it's also a yeast. It's also present on everybody, every warm-blooded mammal. It's all over our bodies. And most of the time, it's not causing a problem. But I find when the immune system is ramped up against Candida, it can see Malassezia. And I think you get this kind of crosstalk where the immune system is like, you look a lot like that Candida guy that we're supposed to go after. Just to be safe, I'm going to go after you too. And we start this immune response against Malassezia yeast on the skin, and we can get things like dandruff or cradle cap in infants, seborrheic dermatitis, or these flaky red rashes that often happen on the face, around the ears, at the hairline. Even conditions like tinea versicolor, which is kind of like hypopigmented or lighter patches a lot of times on the chest, back, or arms. There's all sorts of problems that Malassezia can cause, but the crosstalk is an example, right? I usually only see Malassezia conditions on the skin with Candida yeast overgrowth in the gut. And so it really is all connected, because the gut dictates so much of our immune system that you cannot ignore the gut if you really want to get to the root cause of skin disease, which is why I do all that gut microbiome testing and work on my patients.
Wow. So I think, we're going to need to wrap up, because I know you've got patients to see today, but I think what I'm hearing is a common thread is balance is just so critical in all areas for skin health, and connection between, every choice we make and how we nourish ourselves, either with products or with food, has an effect on our skin. And I would love to just explore more of this with you. There's so much detail we could go into. This could be all day. But I do know that you provide a lot of resources for people on your website, and you've done a lot of podcasts that are available on your website. So do you want to mention some of these resources that you have and where they can find you?
Yeah, so my clinic website is integrative-dermatology-center.com. And as a naturopathic doctor, we're licensed by state. So I'm licensed in California, Oregon, and Washington. I can only see patients who live in those states. But even for people, I get emails every day from people in other states and around the world who want help. I just launched a new site called rootcausedermatology.com, and there's videos on there about different conditions. Right now there's 5, so acne, eczema, psoriasis, hair loss, and then the seborrheic dermatitis, Malassezia, dandruff I was talking about. And so, anyone can take those courses if they don't live in a state. But like you said, there's a lot of podcasts I've linked on my site. Those are, free to listen to. And yeah, there's just between integrative-dermatology-center.com and Root Cause Dermatology, hopefully there's information to kind of help people get more understanding about what kind of skin conditions they're suffering from.
That's great. And there's a lot of good detail in those podcasts. I've listened to several myself, and so I want to highly recommend those. So if you've got a condition, I know conversation has probably sparked a lot of interest in diving deep into some individual skin conditions. So we hope you'll go visit her websites and find more information there.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do today, because we got through about half of our questions for you. So I had to do some more digging. Yeah. But we can't thank you enough. I think this is going to help so many people. So we really, really appreciate your expertise.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's been great chatting with you guys. And as you can see, I could chat about it forever.
Well, thank you again, Dr. Greenberg. And thank you everybody out there for joining us today. We'll see you next time.
If you'd like to access other episodes or subscribe so you don't miss a beat, you can find us at nanp.org/NANP-podcast.
Membership in the NANP provides you with a competitive advantage. Whether you're a current practitioner or a student, we want you to become an active, informed leader of the holistic nutrition community and join today at nanp.org. NANP is very proud to provide the highest level of professional recognition and validation in the holistic nutrition industry through the board certification in holistic nutrition credential. To earn this valuable designation, candidates must demonstrate an exceptional level of knowledge and understanding of holistic nutrition by passing a board exam and documenting client contact hours.
Are you ready to boost your credibility with board certification? Visit NAMP.org today to apply.
Keep in mind that the information on the NAMP podcast is for educational purposes only and should not be considered medical or legal advice. The NAMP is not liable or responsible for any harm, damage, or illness arising from the use of the information contained herein. By listening to the information on this podcast, you agree to defend, indemnify, and hold harmless the NAMP and all agents. Copyright NAMP, all rights reserved.